Thank you for tuning in to Cents Per Mile. I'm your host, Charles Gracie.
And I'm your co-host, Paul Gibson. So just like always, before we get started, if you could like, subscribe, rate wherever you're watching and listening, click the notification bell so you don't miss anything that comes out. That will help us start to do a lot cooler stuff on the channel, like what we're doing today. What are we doing today, Josh?
Today we're talking about the 2023 freight predictions, and I'm very curious to find out who are our guests today, Charles.
Well, we got Dooner from What the Truck at Freight Waves, and we got Michael Vincent, the dude, from the Sustainiacs podcast.
How you doing today, guys?
Hey, what's going on? You can still call me the dude. It's not like WWE where they stole the Rock from him.
When we're talking about freight and the future of freight, especially in this combustible market that we've been dealing with, one of the things that you guys come from a background in is the predictive analytics of freight. So can you tell us a little bit how that plays into everything?
The formula of like What the Truck, what it was I was the human element, right? I was the people element. I was sort of the business element, and Michael Vincent was the data and the analytics guys. You saw his LinkedIn post and all of that. So yeah, Michael, you take this one away because you'd inform me on this stuff too.
How predictive that is. So you got 7 or 8 days to talk about that. Yeah, that is like Dooner said, it is a meaty question. It's a huge question. When you start talking about data, you got to always bring up first, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics, right? You can make things say whatever they want to. Hence the argument over a bloodbath or not a bloodbath, right? There was a bloodbath. We're still in the middle of this thing, right? But it's all relative to where we were, right? Where the bloodbath may end where we're still slightly above 2019, but 2019 sucked, and coming down from that top was a bloodbath. It has been a bloodbath, no doubt about it. But it's the transparency, and so how does data play into trying to get that predictive analytics as to what is going on? You have to have the context. You have to have the human element along with it, and you have to have the experience and the people who have worked in the industry, like a Dooner, like myself, like yourself, Charles, people who have driven trucks and understand how this data actually impacts and can make those connections, right? You can't just throw a bunch of data PhD scientists at it and expect to have anything that's worthwhile, right? By the same token, you can't have Dooner and I, going after data and pretending like we are scientists and knowing what plots are, et cetera, and that type of stuff. You've seen the arguments on LinkedIn as well between two people who actually know, or two different groups of people who actually know what the data means. One of them is right, the other's wrong, because one of them is sitting in an academia ivory tower and never smelled diesel before in their life, and the other one actually knows how it impacts people and what's going on, and it's not going to say, hey, there's no bloodbath, when carriers and owner-operators are going out of business by the dozens a day.
Yeah, I think that was a good explanation on that. And I know for some of these people, they don't even know how or what is determining this data. For all they think that there might be a team of mad scientists hidden in the basement under Freight Waves deciding all of this stuff.
No, I think he makes a good point, though. I mean, like, the data is fine, but it all needs context. It all needs to be verified. And a big part of that verification is having a podcast, is having a show like What the Truck or Freight Waves Now, like, where we're able to talk to 4 to 5 people a day on air live, like you get to see that, but not to mention all the people that we talk to when we're booking, when we're writing articles, when we're doing the research, and social media plays a massive component too. And not just LinkedIn, I mean, Twitter is a much greater resource, at least insofar as what I do, because there's a lot more of the trucking community over there, so I get a lot more feedback from them on what is actually happening. And the data, like if the data said nothing, and there's a reason why we get a much different response too from like drivers on Twitter, for example, versus like the academic that Michael Vincent mentioned who just sits there looking at, 2-month-old census reports and shit like that. It's a big difference. So we rather have that surface level too. Sure, data and tech is important, but like every tech and supply chain, it's just another layer to what is actually happening in the physical world.
No, and I appreciate that. And one of the things you brought up was What the Truck. What's the role that plays in all of this and getting that out there to everyone?
It's an evolving thing. I mean, What the Truck started because Freight Waves, they wanted to build out their podcast network and their TV network, and I so happened to join the company at that time, and I took on a production role within that. And my goal had always been, because I've worked in several different jobs within freight was to be a connector and to have all those different perspectives, because even the acronyms that we use within this industry, they don't mean one thing to another one. So I was like, you know what, there's so much like webinars that are designed for like to put 120 people who are very, very nuanced and they know a specific part of the field really well. I didn't want to go that direction. I wanted to be the gateway drug to freight, where anybody in the office from the C-suite on down can listen, they can get introduced to these concepts. Then if they want to go like really deep and drill in, they can. And we introduce data through that, but we introduce people and everything else. And that's really what the truck really is. It's an awareness platform that we've used and grown in this industry.
And done very well. I mean, that's how we all met, was through that. And I watch it every day, and you guys are putting that material out there. And I think it's brought a lot of awareness to things that much before that time didn't have that much of awareness to it within the industry, to have it on one common platform.
Well, I think what's cool about it is not just that, but I think it's made like sense for Miles here and all these other shows. It's helped create an ecosystem, and it had that much gravity to it. And another one, like another really influential one, was Put That Coffee Down, that Kevin Hill and I started a few years ago. And that started a lot of people who were like, you know what, I could turn my sales knowledge, or I could turn my marketing knowledge into a show, and I can create a community within there. So I think that's like probably the proudest thing I am, and what that really is to build this thing in media that did not exist.
Yeah. So, Dooner, let me add on to that just a little bit from the perspective of we always talk about transparency of data, right? And having that and being able to collaborate with that data, et cetera, right? And you have the data, right? You have okay, it's this rate from China to North America West, or whatever it happens to be, right? And you got flatbed rates and rejections and so on and so forth. But you have all this other data, if you will, or knowledge that is in people's heads that can't be brought out and shared or become transparent until it's drawn out of them. And to me, that's what FreightWaves and what the truck and Put That Coffee Down were and are, right, is bringing that. I looked at it as okay, we're bringing the human element to it, but what does that human element say about what is going around them, and how does what is going around, what is happening around them, impact them from the perspective of what is their mode, or what is their vertical, and what is happening in this other vertical. Because a lot of people didn't understand that when Paul doesn't feel like buying, or Charles doesn't feel like he can afford to buy jerseys for Paul, that starts the cycle that goes all the way across the world into production, and all the way back through ocean and all that other kind of thing, and all the way back down to the last mile delivery guy who's bringing those things. All of that interconnects, and bringing that together and that knowledge was really what it was. So,
no, that's pretty cool. So, there's benefits to having that platform and having that audience and getting those different perspectives. And you two, in your experiences, have found ways to leverage those to build this community, as you said, Dooner, and, bring that awareness and promote this environment, this ecosystem where others are jumping on board, like ourselves, where, we each have our little niche and what we're trying to communicate to betterment of the industry.
We did have a list of questions about freight predictions. So if you guys don't mind, I'll shotgun through those real quick. So from a driver perspective, what is the benefit of using freight predictions? Like specifically like an owner operator, obviously, who's booking their own freight and whatnot.
To me, it depends on how macro or micro those predictors are, right? If it's lane level, quite obviously, you're looking for something that is. I mean, it's going to help you out, right? You know what you can negotiate and what you can look forward, helping you plan your trips and look at those type of things, especially and freight volumes as well, right? Where is it easiest to get rolling and move to, and that type of stuff. On a more macro level, it really comes down to, should I be investing in more equipment? Should I take that investment? Should I be saving more, or what should I be doing as far as my growth? Right? I mean, there's a couple different things inside, and you can unpack a ton of stuff between there. But that's my high level opinion of it.
No, I got to agree with him here. And one comment that we got frequently this year since the call about the market falling was owner operators reaching out and saying, we were thinking of making a buying decision on a truck or trailers and increasing our fleet, and we are thankful that we didn't, because now the market's going down and we've had to let go a driver or two. So we're glad that you put that call out there. And I think it was sort of deeply offensive to some of us who've worked in this industry when there was like that call out that Freightways is being irresponsible by naming this. No, it's not. We are thinking of that owner-operator. We're thinking of the people who are going to be most in the harm's way by reacting the slowest. That is often the smallest guy. And they're going to get killed if they go out there and they buy trucks that at the time were, and I think they still are right now, they're still overly inflated. There's still high notes that they don't want, and money's only getting more expensive. So I think we feel perfectly happy that we led people away from doing that. And I think that that's where that can really help. I think when you get to the prediction of like day to day, trying to predict, oh, should I run this today versus next week? I don't know if you're ever going to win that game. It's too quick. I mean, you have to follow the trend lines. You have to look at where the data shows the trend is going. And as we said at the beginning of this, you got to know the context too. And that's not just the context of freight, but it's like the context of the market. For example, past 2 years, super driven by retail, right? So if we take all the money, and it wasn't just stimulus. It's not like we gave everyone $1,000 and they bought stuff. It's just people felt more confident. Robinhood was doing well. People were bored. They were locked in the house, and you felt like you had more money. So people bought more shit. Knowing that, too, can drive your freight decisions, because if you know that suddenly everyone's going to get all bearish and they're not going to buy a bunch of junk, and that extra 20% that was in the market was all excess retail, you got to know that. You got to know that moving ahead through the year.
Yeah, you absolutely do. And it's that data and that predictive model and what we were doing at Freightways and giving that information out there and calling those is highly important to the smaller, the OOs and the smaller, the independents and the smaller fleets, because those guys are the first ones to feel things. And they actually, whether they know it or not, are the ones that know what's going on. Now, they may not feel that confidence, and they should, because I've known it my entire career, that they're the ones that really predict what's going on. If they're looking to the big dogs to decide where the economy is going, they're looking at the wrong place. They're the ones that see the lead edge.
No, and I think that's an important takeaway from that. You know, I mean, you guys trying to put the information out there so the individual owner operators, those small companies that are going to feel that pain in the butt a lot more than the bigger companies, if they choose to use the platform or follow one of the shows or the information on the articles, they can come out ahead or at least be a little bit further along with the education to make those decisions.
Yeah, and so you guys kind of covered it as far as like, you know, looking at, you know, making decisions to go off it with like, you know, as far as like micro and macro, but like when making these predictions, is it more like based on macro situations? Like, for instance, you know, let's say, you know, 2022 was fun, you know, like that ship getting basically stuck sideways forever. You know, so like, do you base, obviously you can't plan for that, but all around, do you typically make these predictions based more on macro elements or micro elements?
Well, I'm glad that you had mentioned the Ever Given, because that's a good one where someone might think that actually impact them, where it's very unlikely that would have impacted your U.S. freight at the time with that come over. So that's good to know, because that's a big news story. And you go, oh, is all my stuff there? No, it probably was not going to, at least a year ago, the Port of SoCal. Nowadays, it might be going to Savannah. Nowadays, it might have actually been on there, but this was in 2020. But I mean, what do you mean by that? Are you talking about like our own human calls? Are you talking about the predictive analytics within Sonar? If you're talking about our own human calls, that's just us assholes with our, you know, opinions. Just our opinions, dude. If you're talking about Sonar, that's above my pay grade. Vincent might know the data workings.
Yeah. Well, and I guess it's more or less like on what you guys like when you do put out predictions. Like, is it all around? Do you take more of that human element or more of the data element when you guys decide to put out a prediction?
For me, it's not. It's a combination of both, and it's a more holistic look at it. Right? You can't just say that the trucking market is going to do this based on trucking data or what truckers feel. You've got to understand the whole macro. So it's macro and it's across the board. You got to look at all the different modes as well, right? Because long haul, if you look at long haul, it has been the length of haul of freight moving on truckload in the United States has been diminishing for years, a long time before 2022 and 2020 occurred. But it's sped it up because now you got most of the freight, or a good portion of freight has moved to the eastern seaboard where it's much closer to the population. That changes a lot of things, and it's not just truckload. It's also stevedoring. It's also drayage. It's also intermodal moves are different. It's also warehousing moves, etc. Why go from Savannah all the way out to Indiana or Illinois in order to disperse back to the East Coast? Why aren't you just going right into Charlotte, or why aren't you just going right into Columbus or into Chattanooga? It changes all those different things. So those predictions have to be touch base across across lanes, right? You had Peloton shipping bicycles on planes at one point.
It was insane. I mean, all that fake money, of the past 2 years and the insanity that was driving and subsidizing a lot of decisions. Like we don't think about this much, but you talk about like Peloton market and like VC money is driving these insane decisions to take up capacity on cargo jets to put bikes in there that and hot tubs too. Remember Lorianne was on they were sending hot tubs, like how? And then I think the only thing like saving grace of inflation, like that is saving Christmas, is if you have looked at deals on like Black Friday, Cyber Monday right now, electronics and clothes are like dirt cheap. Everyone's just clearing out that inventory. So yeah, groceries suck, but at least like you're not getting completely murdered because that end of the economy can't pick itself up. So as a consumer, at least you can get your kids some shit to put under the tree.
Yeah, you just can't buy any eggs to scramble for them.
No egg, no food. You're skinny. You have a nice TV.
Can't feed them, but we can give you some electronics.
This will keep your mind off it, kid.
You know they have Red Ryder BB guns for $25 at Walmart?
Oh, I love those. Does it have the compass in the stock? Does a compass in the stock?
I don't know. I haven't broken it open, but it's $25. Like you can get a real air rifle one.
So when we're talking about this, before we get into the predictions, how do you think 2022 stacked up historically when we're talking freight?
I think it confused so many people because of like what happened. And there was people very resistant to the idea because they had spent. I mean, like the hive mind of like a supply chain that we saw over the past. Right, you can see how laborious and how slow, and they follow the leader. So usually one of the easy indicators is what does Amazon do? What does Walmart do? What do the big guys do? Because everyone follows suit there. But it took a lot of these companies so long to really, there's such a fight for capacity. And look, it's not like they're stupid. It's that they're all had to get their stuff on there and it just gets slotted when it can get slotted. And because of all the rail delays and the port delays, it took so long for all this stuff to get decoupled that you're talking about like stuff that was supposed to go out last holiday. People finally had it by spring. Now they're trying to push that stuff out there. They're cannibalizing components. They're doing what they can to make it all work. So I think the real thing is just it caught people by surprise, but I think ultimately it was inevitable, right? I mean, I think where we are was going to happen one way or another when we opened back up.
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of crazy things, a lot of different moving parts that drove us to where we're currently at. I mean, you look at truck capacity, you look at a lot of companies that have never said, hey, we're full, they're full. You look at companies that are traditionally growing their margins of their trucks during this time, and they're not. And then other companies that you wouldn't think would be paying these through the roof rates on trucks were. And then when the rates plummeted, now they're sitting there with those overly priced trucks and feeling the pain of those decisions.
Well, Vince, remember when we started having, like near the end of last year, we started having different 3PLs coming on, and they're like, we just bought X amount of trailers. We got our new hot shot little trailer thing going on. And we're like, isn't this weird? Like these companies who would never stay the hell out of assets are now getting in assets at their highest value possible. That was so weird.
Yeah, it made no sense. Made no sense. Yeah, it made no sense. It's some, and I think you're right, Dooner, in the fact that a lot of people looked at like, what is Amazon doing? What are these big dogs doing, et cetera? And that was not a very brilliant move, and nor is it, I think, even now, because you're not in the same financial category as they are, right? They can go out there and buy a bunch of planes because you know what? They'll just crush you like a bug when we come out of this anyways, right? But cents per mile going out there and buying 15, flatbeds is not a good move.
No, it's not in our budget right now.
No, and you're ruining. And the question was, why are these people that have these high multiples that could go out and cash in right now at the height of this at a 17-20 multiple or something, going and buying assets would do nothing but kill your multiple value when you go to sell your business, right? And a lot of those businesses thought, hey, 15-20 multiple isn't enough. Well, guess what they're doing now? Going, damn, I wish I would have sold at multiple at a double digit multiple because they ain't worth that now. Things are crushing.
Well, and if you notice, one of the biggest detractors of the call about the freight market going down was a trailer rental company.
Yeah, exactly.
Those guys with a trailer rental company, they wouldn't shut up because who's going to rent our trailer? I mean, just look at the motivation of people sometimes too, and how they're positioning the market. You gotta understand, like LinkedIn itself is just a lot of content marketing, right? It's a lot of people within things that are promoting for whatever their vertical is. And look, Freightways is that way to an extent too. Everything's content marketing to an extent these days. But you also have to just understand, take everything with a little bit of grain of salt, right? And understand that people are also in supply chain. They might be looking from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Right? It's fragmented business. They might be in it. It might not be applicable to you.
They may have a different plan that they can survive and you can't. I mean, just maybe.
Amazon can hold $1 billion in sound bars, right? Like,
That's
they
right.
can do that.
They can do that. They can do that. Maersk can buy air cargo capacity and start an air cargo, right? I mean, they can do
Although
that.
Soren Skew, did you hear Skew's out?
Yeah.
I don't know if it
No,
has anything
I just
to
read
do
that
with
today.
this.
He's gone. New CEO.
Oh, you're seeing a lot of shifts in personnel right now. It's the end of the year. A lot of people moving around. A lot of people holding people accountable for decisions that were made.
Then hold on. So here's a question for you guys. Do you think, let's talk about the steamship lines first. Do you think that they honestly thought, I know that with the ocean trade, the JOC, the guy Peter Tershel, he said that this is never going back to normalization. This is never going back. They will control capacity to ever. Do you think these carriers too, the steamship lines, they honestly thought that? They thought Skew was supposed to protect these $20,000 container rates and they wouldn't ultimately fall back to earth?
You know, you'd think by some of the decisions that were made that they thought that, but I think the reality is hit that, you know, they got so used to things running at the price points that they were for so long. And then when they came down, they're like, oh, it's a bloodbath. But at a certain point, they were calling it a bloodbath when it was just returning to the normalcy that it was before everything shot up.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the rate, though. I mean, like, if falling off a ledge, it all really depends on the height.
Yeah.
You're probably not going to hurt
If you lived your
yourself.
whole life at sea level and suddenly you're on Everest and you fell, you're still dying when you get to the bottom.
But you're seeing it on the driver's side of things. You know, a lot of the new drivers that came in when everything was up, they're sitting there and they're like, oh, this is great. Now that things returned down, all of a sudden, oh, it's terrible. The world's ending. I got to hop jobs. And it's not necessarily the case. It comes down to now we have to educate these people that, hey, you came in when we were up here. Now we're back here. This is actually the reality. Let's work with the reality.
Or maybe they came in with the wrong motivation. So it's like, look, if you came in here, you think this is a constant quick buck business, you are in the wrong business. This is a grind business.
Yeah.
This ain't a business you come in for one day. And even like the snakes, like look at some of the snakes who try to come in and like be robber barons. Like look at Slink, that dude got busted. Look at Trevor Milton, that dude got busted. It's not a big world, freight. That's the thing. It's not a huge world, and it's full of cynical bastards.
Yeah, it appears to be much bigger than it is. Everybody knows somebody. People that work within it know that. It's a very small world inside. And I think the people that looked at this with the experience from 30 feet above and made the decisions, they're the ones that are coming out of this ahead when it's all shaken out. And going into 2023, I think there's a lot of look back moments where we're like, oh, we could have done this differently. We should have done this differently.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of them reacted like capacity is always overreacted, both way to good and bad. And it was just a massive, massive overreaction. And I think a lot of them will come through it with not that big of a deal. I mean, one of the worst case scenarios, I guess, are one of the two of FedEx and C.H. Robinson, right? We just had those two there. And okay, so they cut some middle management fat and went on when they misunderstood when the fall was going to actually happen. C.H. Robinson did, right? For instance, they're not going to go out of business because they screwed up, right? I mean, they just, they can react. It's the littler guys, the guys without those financial pockets that are not gonna make it.
Yeah, I just talked to one. He bought his truck thinking it was get rich quick. One from company driver bought his truck. Then he added a second one on. This one he didn't even buy. He was leasing it, and it was like $1,500 a week.
Wow.
And then when prices came down, that $1,500 was burying him. So then he gave that back, didn't get nothing for it, sold his truck, which, okay, now he's going back to company driving. He sold his truck when the market's somewhat still up on them. So he came out a little bit ahead, but still not close to what he paid for that thing a year ago.
Well, who's also getting killed right now, too? I mean, one of the storylines going on in the market is the spread between retail and rag diesel. So the mega carriers, they're not getting crushed in this high diesel environment as long as it sustains. Actually, they're banking this stuff. They're like, great, FSC. You know who's getting screwed though? Anybody who's buying retail. Anybody buying retail. All those small trucking companies.
You are right. You're dead on, Dooner. I mean, I've been yelling at for years. And the first time I really realized it, Dooner, was back in the crash in like 08, 09, when fuel, remember when fuel went from like 120 bucks a barrel to like 20. It wasn't as bad as like negative money like we saw, right? Where it was they would pay you to store barrels of oil in your garage or whatever like a couple of years ago. But it dropped pretty bad. And a lot of companies went, "Uh-oh, look at our top line revenue. It's gone." And it was all fuel surcharge, and it drives a huge amount. But you're right. If you've got those plus or minus rack, you're making money. Huge enterprise trucking does not care about fuel price as long as it's high.
Yeah. No, it's good for them because it's hurting. It hurts all their smaller competitors.
Yeah, and it helps their bottom line. And it helps their bottom line when it's up. That spread, 20% of $5 is better than 20% of $3.
And it's like $2 and some odd cents right now. It is not insignificant. It's a mass. I think it's the highest it's ever been at the moment. And the other worst part about being a little guy is there's nobody to fight for you to be like, hey, that's total. But and in fact, the one guy who did, and like, I'm not like a huge Biden fan or anything, but the guy was like, look, at the rack, there is some room. There's $2.20 of relief that could be given to small truckers in diesel. Were some decisions to be made.
Yeah, no, they definitely could. And the odd thing about that huge gap right now, like you said, 2 and some odd cents, is that naturally it's around $1 something, $1 and some odd cents. When you look at
and no one calls foul then.
Yeah, nobody called foul then, but that's naturally where it is. Really, there's a little bit of profit in there for those retailers, right? But a lot of that is actually tax and movement of it, right? That is in that spread as well. But that's when you look at the average across the states and everything, California is one of the highest in tax, et cetera. But when you look at the taxes across the state, there's somewhere in 85 to 87 cents or something like that that is actual cost between rack and retail. The rest of it's profit.
And that kind of leads us into what we're going to ask you guys next. With your infinite wisdom from your backgrounds, similar to the question we asked earlier, how do you think 2023 will look from a historical perspective?
I think you're going to see recovery. I think we hit the floor. I don't know. I mean, I think that what's going to happen is I think corporations, they are making cuts because of the economy, but I also think they're making cuts because corporations like to use this time as cover to make cuts. It's the end of the year. They're coming up with their 2023 budgets. I actually don't see anyone panicking about their 2023 budgets. I think what they're going to do is blow through this inventory. They're going to have to build back up. And I don't disagree with, for example, what Craig said the other day was that in June, I think you really could start to see the wheels moving again and us looking at what that true sustainable post-COVID economy looks like. I don't think that's unrealistic.
No, I don't either. I would agree. And I mean, it's hard to disagree with what Craig is telling you at any great amount, in any great amount. Just, I mean, look at the track record since he burst on the scene with Freightways, right? It's pretty damn good. But I would agree with him. Even before I saw that, and I did see it because I've said before, anytime Craig talks in public or to me, I take notes because he's a pretty smart guy. But I agree with that. I don't know if we've hit bottom yet. I think we will, though, before that June, and at least be on the rebound by then. I mean, you got to, public sentiment or consumer sentiment ultimately drives everything. It ultimately drives everything, right? And you've got a population that is still looking for that feel good, right? Coming out of the last 3 years, still are. It's
well, Vince, I'll tell you. So, like, I asked Mulvey, I asked Zach, I asked Donnie. And Henry, I asked those for what if they thought in the NTDLI. I think we're at 197, which is high. We get a nice little like sort of Cyber Monday, Black Friday. I think this week it's back down to maybe like 186. In 2022, lowest point was 161. This is line haul, no fuel. I said over under $1.50. All three of those guys said it was going to go under $1.50 and really negative. Where Craig was like, if it goes to $1, like it's not going to go to $1.30. That's unsustainable. What do you guys see, or Vince, you're more familiar with the chart. Do you think 150 over under?
Over. Not a lot over, but over. I don't think it dips below 150.
161 was a huge drop. I mean, people have to understand that was very, very low.
That was very, very low, and I think we're on a rebound, if not already at the bottom. A lot of people have shaken out. I mean, when you look at it, when you try and decide what the what the capacity is. It is not what some look at and say, wow, there's so much more capacity here because they're looking at MC numbers, et cetera. That's baloney, because you take one guy out of a enterprise carrier or 5 guys, 4 of them quit and go do construction, and one of them opens up his own MC. You've now doubled your capacity according to those numbers, right? It's completely bogus. It doesn't mean anything really. So I think we've lost a lot of capacity, and it's starting to come down. And I think we're on the rebound. I don't think 150 is going to happen. I think I'm going over. And really, I think it is. People want a feel good. We didn't get it. COVID was over, we got released, then we went back into it. Then China shut down, and then Putin's an asshole. And you know, oh, by the way, the world is warming, and oh, the Mississippi ran out of water. There's no more freaking water there, right? I mean, it's just been one pound after another, and people. So when they get a chance to calm down, take a breath, and make some money and spend it, and the economy goes, it's gonna come back.
It's so wild to think that like the Freedom Convoy started out the year down in Canada is this big movement to not usher us. It just seems like that was like 2 or 3 years ago that something that happened, but it was this year, the beginning of the year, that like a North American movement had to really put out there to the governments here, like, hey, look, people do not want to go back in mass and shut down schools and shut down businesses. Like, people are standing up for this. And that was the beginning of this year. And then the war happened, like you mentioned, Michael Vincent. It changed things. But like, even as much as the war, we're still through the reverberations and the echoes of all that inventory crap from COVID. But that's also why I think we both agree that next year so much of that is going to change. I think the unbundling and the unwinding, we're very deep into that at this point.
Yeah, I think we see the curve up. We've raised our hands. We've taken a dive down that first hill, and I think we're near that bottom to see things maybe start to turn up.
The survivors have survived. The ones who didn't survive are going to rebuild. They're going to be doing their own thing by that point. In trucking, you're going to see that capacity. Like you said, it's all falling through the colander. It's had an entire year to fall through that diesel colander to get rid of the chafe from the way. And yeah, and I think consumers too. Look, we're Americans. We like to buy things. We like to get out. And as much as like as crazy as the country is, we're an optimistic country. People want to believe that the next day is going to be better, and that they're gonna win the lottery, that they're gonna be the president, that they're gonna be a billionaire. You know, we all want to believe that, and that is one of the things that keeps this country moving forward for better or worse. And I think and VC too. Look at all these venture capital guys. They're not going to sit around not investing in things for over a year. Like, they got to put money back into stuff. It's all going to open back up. You know what was going to hurt though? Vincent, do you agree with me on this one? And in terms of freight tech, topically in freight tech, I think the companies that are relying on VC in the next couple of months, I think that you're going to see them go. And you probably should. I mean, some of them probably don't, you know, I hate to say that, but some of them probably don't belong anymore.
Yeah, so you guys are pretty much forecasting the same thing along the lines of, hey, we're not completely out of the woods yet, but, you know, come June, we should start to see some upside on this and start to have that feel-good story that everyone's been waiting on.
Yeah, no, we saw some of them start to die when we came out of COVID right off the beginning, right? I mean, we saw the great resignation. People jumped to all these new tech and stuff like that. And a lot of them they were like, they regretted it after a while, right? Because they're the first. But I don't think we're done with that culling of the herd yet. I don't think so. I don't think so. Well, I mean, dude, you still see people coming up and say, hey, man, our newest thing is, it's a new digital freight broker.
Yeah.
What, really?
DFB, I mean.
Okay. What? It's Digital X2, Digital Plus. I don't.
I always get worried about the ones where like we have 10 minutes to talk to like this company, and at the end of it, I still don't have any idea what they do.
Yeah, you still don't know what they do. You have no clue. I mean, it was less than a year ago. We were talking to a guy who was going to drop parachutes out of planes on the way into airports.
Well, at least that makes sense. I know what that is, though. Like, what does increased dock efficiency and empower the shipper mean? Like, I understand what the words mean, but like, what does that mean?
yeah. Show me it in practice.
Yeah, like what? Okay, how? You're going to come and train the guys? What are you doing?
Will see. But you know what Convoy, JB Hunt, and Uber are doing? You had Driegert on the other day. What those guys are doing, that's one of the silver linings coming out of this as well, is that seeing that importance of actual collaboration of anonymous data to be able to improve efficiencies. I mean, there's so much goes into that.
I think there's a few more that can go.
Well, I've practiced. Dooner can tell you that two years ago that would have taken me a half hour to say.
No, but you know what? I mean, look, when we talk about like automation, AI, autonomous trucks, people like always look at them and they get the fear. But like the real automation is going to sweep through. I mean, it's already going through warehouse, but it's going to sweep through the brokerages and stuff like this. Yeah, it's going to enable there to be less brokers. It's taking a lot of that busy work away. That's a step towards that, to have three major companies like that align on a much needed standard. And I think that's going to be like the scary theme. And I don't know how that makes predicting hard, right? Because Vincent, there's always another variable you throw in, and then you're like, but what does automation and job loss and just job decay do?
Yeah, what does that look like?
That? And look, maybe we're all wrong. Maybe this does create brave new industries, and everyone can transition. Everyone's cool, and we don't need UBI, and it's not like, you know, a dystopian nightmare.
Well, that takes collaboration with government and social networks as well to retrain workforces as well, right?
But I think you're going to see a lot of that. I think you're going to see brokerages shift. And I think that, like, what you're hearing, like Steam, for example, I think locally Steam, where you hear companies being like, yeah, we hired like 20,000 new brokers and put them everywhere. I think you're going to see the opposite press releases at the end of the decade, which is like we were able to, or even maybe even sooner with like what Elon did by cutting like 80% of Twitter. And if they're able to function, like that is going to become a big theme. How do we automate and massively cut staff? And that's a scary theme, but I can honestly see that one coming because Silicon Valley and the way these companies think is they're amoral, right? They're not thinking if this is like right or wrong for humanity. They're thinking about how does this make money? And I think that that's very alluring.
Yeah. Okay, but if you apply on top of that, Dooner, the notion from and I forget the gentleman's name, one of our keynote speakers at F3, talking about population decline, right?
Yes,
is this
Peter
not
Zahan, right?
Yeah, exactly. Is this not something that actually needs to happen over the next decade in order for the United States to remain an economic power?
Could be. I mean, like, can't this, like, because when I was sitting next to you, I was watching that one, and I'm like, but isn't the counterpoint to this that in some ways this solves a lot of our sustainability issues? This solves a lot of our employment issues. Like, I understand that you're saying, and I know that at least for the next 10, 20 years in terms of like our parents, our grandparents, the elderly, that's going to be very tough because there's not enough, there's a diminishing number of service people to take care of the generation above. So the pyramid flips upside down. And I think that's the crumble that they're worried about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what you just talked about is avoiding this dystopian environment. When you start having all this automation, that automation can actually help support those that are just like literally 2 years older than me. I mean, I'm 2 years away from a boomer, right? And that's the generation we're looking at going, oh shit. And by the way, that's why there's nobody waiting tables. It's because all those people during the pandemic said, forget it. Why am I going to work the next 5 years? I need to go live my life before the next, coronavirus comes through. And they left. And they opened up a whole lot of positions where somebody waiting tables could go out and get a certificate and go make a better life for themselves, bang, like that. And that's why, man, I drive around Chattanooga right now, Dooner, and there's some restaurants that were like awesome that are gone. And it's not because they failed, it's because they couldn't get anybody work.
I mean, you still walk in them. I was just out. The wife's birthday was this week, and we went out to eat, and we were waiting for 20 minutes for a table, and we're looking in the restaurant, and 2/3 of it is empty. And they're just pacing the tables because not enough help.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's going to be a common theme as far as workforce goes. And who can blame these people? If you can go out there and you see this, hey, I can reach for the stars and move up, then yeah, it's going to force these restaurants and these other industries to start looking at, well, what does entry-level staff look like in today's world? Yeah. It's changed.
We need those robotic servers that somebody who had those online, I forget, dude, or they were at a McDonald's or a coffee house or Dunkin' Donuts or something.
Oh, sure. Look, there's no better way to get Americans behind an idea than to like inconvenience us. Like, you can be as against automation as you want. You have to wait 2 minutes in line to order at McDonald's. Where's the iPad I can order on myself? People instantly want to get rid of that idiot behind the counter.
But then who do you complain to when it comes out wrong? And when
you complain to the person anyway, what do they really do for you? Like, come on. It's not like it's a great experience one way or the other.
So with the FMCSA targeting brokerage transparency in 2023, how do you think that's going to play an effect on the market as well as into the driver's perspective of the market?
I would say this, be careful what you wish for, because I think it's ridiculous. I don't think it's needed. I think the drivers are going to find out that if it works, I mean, if they actually give that transparency out there, which I don't see why they would, You know, because you don't, you know, what's next? Dooner, are you going to demand that McDonald's tells you what the profit they're making on their French fry is? I mean, I don't understand why that is the driver's business. They're the ones setting that price anyways. I don't think it changes anything other than opens up a slippery slope that we probably don't want to go down.
So I look at it like if you go to a dealership, all right, if you agree on the price of the vehicle that you're buying at the dealership,
MSRP,
and then a week later,
so what? MSRP doesn't mean cost.
and then a week later you see it for less, you can't be mad at the dealership because the price changed a week. You were okay with it at the point when you bought it.
I was a finance manager once selling at a car dealership down in Naples, and people would ask me, what's a good deal? I said, one that you walk out of there feeling good about. Don't ask, don't go any further than that, because you'll just be pissed off. Because MSRP, and no matter what they give you, they're still making money. And guess what? There's no such thing as 0% financing.
Well, but here's the thing, guys. I treat Best Buy like I'm at a Moroccan bazaar. I'm there to make a deal. And like Samsung, and I got like, for example, I just got a TV. I got off Samsung, and I saw that it went on sale after I bought it, Charles Gracie. It went on sale 2 days later for $200 less. And I sure as hell went on that chat on customer service and was like, hey, it hasn't even arrived yet. I don't want to like return it and like buy it at the new price. It would really inconvenience the both of us. Do you think I could just get $200 off? And they were like, yeah, sure. So, you know, it doesn't hurt sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. Well, you could have waited until it arrived and said it doesn't work, and they'd said, Keeper would just send you another one.
but then I had like too many.
Yeah, then you got too many. That's
Embarrassment of riches.
Then you could sell it on Facebook Market for twice.
Gift one to the boss. There you go. We talked a little bit about, you know, the outlook on autonomous trucks, how that's going to play, if we see that's going to make a big play in the market. But how do you think with the Tesla and the other electronic vehicle providers putting a dent into anything, or is that not in the 2023 scope? Do you see it being further out?
Oh, no, look, like these things are ordered. People want the Tesla Semi. There's a ton of orders out there. Ryan Peterson from Flexport recently, he's like, look, they haven't even built us. We'd love to have one. I was talking to him after the event they just had. So, look, what Tesla put out there, look, and there's a reason they didn't put out the tar weight, right? We don't know the tar weight. We don't know exactly what this thing weighs unladen, and they don't want you to know that. And if it was a great number like 22,000, they probably would have said that. But even that said, it doesn't matter. There's plenty of local and drayage companies and beverage companies that want these in their fleet. So there's going to be zero problem selling electric vehicles between now and 2027 because none of these OEMs are going to be able to meet demand. It's if they can survive. It's if companies like, if a Nikola can survive. Tesla will be fine. I mean, as long as like Elon doesn't somehow talk himself into oblivion over here. He seems every day to sort of be challenging that. I think it's interesting to see. I understand that Tesla investors probably wish he was not the figurehead for Tesla and was just fighting the Twitter war himself. But no, there's not a single carrier that's going to go, Elon made a tweet I don't like, I'm not going to get a Tesla Semi. That's just not the logic. What they're going to say is it really $180,000? Does it really go 500 miles? How long does it take to charge it? How much does it hold? But the trucks, that space is only going to grow. The biggest bottleneck is just the limitations of the tech itself at the moment.
Well, I know you guys got a little bit of time in these vehicles. I mean, and you guys, it's not your first rodeo in a truck. So how'd you feel about them?
I thought the Nikola was awesome, man. I loved it. I mean, you know, it needs the horn. You need to pull the damn horn. There's nothing wrong with them. The power is incredible. It is really just the weight differential that I think would be the biggest issue, Dooner. And right now it's also it's the infrastructure to charge them, right? I mean, we were in one where they're using a diesel generator to charge a darn thing. Okay, I mean, because you can't plug it into the grid.
Defeats the purpose if you got a big diesel.
I mean, but that's where we're at. You can't say you can't do it, and we shouldn't do it just because of that.
Yeah.
And you know, I go online and I beat up the industry and stuff like that quite a bit, but it's really just because so people understand that, hey, wait a minute, this isn't the solution you think it is yet. There's still a lot of work to do, and people, especially like Dooner was saying, we're a convenience-minded society. And so when we say, oh, well, they got this, then we all stop and go, it's solved. No, it's far from solved yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, the demand is going to be there, man. And as long as Elon doesn't send too many of the wrong tweets.
He's going to get shadow banned by his own company.
Well, I mean, at some point he should, but you know,
It's just me. You don't need to make every you don't need to put it. I don't know. I mean, it's social media though, right? I mean, but somebody's got to fight the war too.
yeah. But when your lawyer comes out and says, "Hey, not making elevated goals is not
No,
fraud.
yes.
Our technology might be a failure, but it's not a fraud," is what he actually said.
Look, you're going to lose kind of that middle libertarian that is like, yes, please
Yeah,
fight against that thing when you yourself can't take a joke like people laughing at you when Dave Chappelle brought you on stage and you banned the account that put that up there while at the same time putting up Twitter files saying you're like other people were deplatformed. That's a little tenuous. But I mean, in terms of like the BEVs, the one thing I will say is people conflate the two. They conflate autonomous and electric, and they're massively different developments. The money being poured into both is different. The public opinion on both is completely different. The government money pouring into both is completely different. So the money that goes into this is public facing, into the autonomous. I mean, into the electric, because people in the public like that. So that is all sort of public. All the dark money goes into autonomous, because that's like putting vehicles into war zones and stuff like that. Vehicles driving themselves and weapons driving themselves. So that's all like that development. It's hard to get the public to get behind the autonomous trucks right now, so they don't really get that. And they have a longer timeline to get out there. They're not the same thing at all. Electric trucks, autonomous trucks are on the road in pilot. Autonomous ones are on pilot, just like electric ones are. Electric ones are in bigger pilots. But they're both limited. We know that guy Jake at EV Semicorp, he bought a Nikola Tre, tried to run it in Florida, and because he didn't have a dedicated route, and he knew this would be a problem, he's like, I just want to run it and see what happens and see what it costs. And they had to go all public chargers, and it was like 40-cent kilowatt. It was like insane. It was like 10 times the cost of diesel to run this truck. So they're viable if you're Pepsi and you have two hubs.
Yeah. Distribution to store back to distribution works. Short haul, regional.
But they're coming.
Oh yeah, eventually they'll be here. Right now,
yeah.
you can't just. They're not going everywhere right this second. Yeah,
And it's exciting, and there's a lot of money in the space. It's just like the argument too gets so defensive right away, because there's like the people who really hate the idea of the technology, and then there's the people who really blindly love it. Where the reality is like, look, we're going to cover it because it's coming one way or the other. There's a lot of interesting things happening there, and these innovations are going to happen whether we want to see them around. We got to understand them, like especially autonomous. Like I really need to know as much about that as I can, so I can communicate to drivers if they really do have something to be concerned about down the road, and how these really are going to factor into what they do.
Yeah.
Well, and it's going to come in stages. They're not just going to go from driver trucks to driverless trucks. You know, you're going to have that pilot in the seat making sure in case something goes wrong. Then you're going to have that road warrior getting retrained behind a desktop to do it remotely. There's stages of these things. They're not just going to be like Thanos snap of the finger and then drivers are gone.
I don't think it's one for one, though. I don't think something they're like, you know what, you lost your job, Joe, because autonomous truck has it, but you're going to go jump in a simulator now and drive with a joystick. I don't think that happens. I think that job is given to a different human being. I think that's
I'd like to think that there's going to be a phase, maybe traditionally you're not going to see that driver that's 70 years old out of the truck going behind a joystick. He's going to fight you the whole way behind it. He can't even figure out how to use his flip phone. So yeah, I think there's a point where there's a divide, but I do think that there's going to be phases to this.
I want to find out who's got the autonomous trailers, man. Besides Quick Loads down there in Athens, Ohio, Sean Jones building them for the containers. Who's got the autonomous trailers that are going to open up these swinging doors on a 53-footer and put down the
That's where your restaurant employees are going to be going to full-time trailer door.
I haven't.
How much money will the lumpers charge now? The lumpers will charge like they should charge through the roof.
Yeah.
Because you don't pay them.
You're screwed, man. I'm not getting out there and opening those doors. Good luck with that one.
No choice.
Yeah, that requires me to actually go outside.
That ain't happening.
That's deal
In the world of the autonomous truck, the lumper is king, right?
Yeah, I mean, are we going to have valets?
The one-eyed, the land of one-eyed.
Trailer valets now?
No, the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. The land of the autonomous truck, the lumper is king.
Yeah,
that's a unique output, but it does, because if you think of who's made the most outrageous price increases during all of this. I've seen some outrageous posted social media lumber fees.
We need to give them more heat. Do we give them enough shit? Should we talk more shit about lumpers?
No, you definitely have room to talk more shit about lumpers.
No, there's nothing wrong with it. Come on, lumpers are only taking advantage of a stupid system, man. It's the system. You got to go after the U.S. Foods and Cisco's of the world and the food warehouses. That's the stuff. We'll order the shit on the right wood.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't hate the lumber, because here's the thing. Like, let's say,
why is it my fault that I'm delivering a 4x4 and you want it on a 2x2? That's my issue.
I've had to take random jobs before. I've had to take a random warehouse job before. You end up a lumper, it doesn't make you an asshole. You're just there to move boxes and do your job.
Yeah, come on, man, Charles. Your hate is misguided, man. It's misplaced, dude.
I don't think it's the actual lumper doing the job that's the problem. I think it's the entire system of how that originated. Yeah, the whole thing is ludicrous.
I agree.
My opinion, you know, they should have their own loading and unloading procedure and staff.
Like, you don't individually necessarily hate a person who's in sales, but in general, you hate the behavior of a lot of salespeople, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, well, up until Paul met me, he hated recruiters, and he found one.
Now he just finds them distasteful.
Well, I mean, but I was one, and I can agree with that. Like, I mean, I knew that I was doing it right, but when someone approaches you and they're like, "Oh, I'm a third-party recruiter," I'm like, "Oh, you're a piece of shit." And then I met Charles, and I was like,
"Yeah, he's the greaser that comes to pick up your daughter."
Yeah, I was like, "Oh, you are, but you at least have the right intent with what you're doing."
Next thing you know, your daughter's pregnant and a change is missing from your drawers. Seen it 1,000 times.
You're just finding mustache hairs on her wool sweater. Red
mustache hairs, yeah.
Well, you know, I wanted to get one more question out there to you guys. You know, I appreciate you guys.
Well, good luck with that, my friend.
I'm sure we got to get off Charles and the porn stash and the Hellcat.
He's really just pivoting and deflecting. That's all it is.
You know, not being an election year, do you see politics having any effect on freight going into this next year?
No. Politics never gets involved when there's no elections.
Well, I mean, they kind of act like they do, right? They're like, we're going to go fix the port. Yeah. It's like, hey, what? You opened up like a parking lot. Like, thanks. Los Angeles. Like,
enough for a social media post.
No, like, I mean, like, stuff's going on. Like, we can talk. It's very easy to be cynical and talk hate. Government, bureaucratic stuff, it takes forever. We know some of, like, for example, the female trucking groups that are working very hard to get representation and have things looked at, like rape and issues they deal with, dealt with, and have a bigger light. Like Bloomberg, for example, Women in Trucking Association, our good friend Desiree over there, they just got an article published putting a light on them in there. And the sad thing is that there's some groups that even try to suppress what they're saying. That message that they're trying to put out there about what's happening to women.
And you know what's amazing, Dooners, if you dig into that stuff, and hopefully you will more on your show, because you got a great audience still, and I love them all, but that expands so far. When you look into that stuff, it's not just the women that are getting abused. Now, they are. But, man, truck drivers all over the place are getting reviewed. And that is something, I agree with you, is so hard to fix, because now you've got a third-party place where somebody's being harassed by another third party, right? It's not all within a workplace.
It makes it a real sticky situation, and they're starting to bring a lot of awareness to it, a lot of momentum to it. Hopefully, it maintains the momentum in 2023 and starts having some course correction.
But look at the impact. Look at the other impact that government will have on it through the FMCSA, which you were just talking about, the transparency with the 3PLs. It's a huge impact. I mean that impact could be really big, but I mean, what they're going to find out is that 3PLs don't make any money whether the rates are high or low. They're getting squeezed.
I mean, the government. I mean, what are the risks for? And I hate to predict risks because each year that we've been in has been so different. But like, what are the risks next year from the government? I mean, there's escalation in war. You know, you've got that. You've got interest rates that could stay out of control, like them not getting. That and completely losing consumer confidence, and you could also just kill the investment market even worse than it is. But like, I feel like this year we kind of already dealt with all that. Like, the ground's got to start.
Well, we had murder hornets to start the year, so you know, unless something drastic.
No, those weren't the beginning of this year, were they? Murder hornets were longer ago. Those weren't this year, were they?
That was like the end of 2020.
Okay.
Yeah, come on, man.
I'm sorry, man. It's been a plethora of nonsense for 2 years. It all starts to blend together.
It does, but you know, to add on to that, Dooner, I think there's some slippery slopes that we could accidentally go down when we beg for certain things. Like at the beginning of 2020. right? Before things went crazy, you had truck drivers that wanted floors on rates, right?
Yeah.
And thank God they didn't get them. I mean, because along with it probably would have been ceilings, right? And then that goes away. So that's a dangerous slope, right? And now you're looking at, if we don't solve this, the issues of detention time and driver overtime in the correct way, it could be a negative impact that 5 years from now we go, damn, I wish we really wouldn't have done that. Because when you open that door to start the government to start regulating pricing and all that kind of stuff and pay, again, there's some land that can be grabbed, especially with depending on the administration or the leanings of those that might be in power at the time. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, it's sort of like that other theme, and that theme of deglobalization, right? And nearshoring and nearshoring and friendshoring and all that and that stuff. But you got to look at the other side of that. Is like here in Chattanooga, for example, we had like an air alert last week. We don't really even have any factories in Chattanooga anymore. And you're telling me you want to bring a bunch of factories to our own soil here, where you see like in Foxconn people riding in the conditions that those people are in, and you think that can work in modern America? Be careful what you wish for, because the types of jobs that factories create in modern America are the same types of jobs that all the people yell at right after they put that there. The same NIMBYism that everybody sort of yells at when they're put there. When you house the people that work in those things, you get all the conflicts that happen from that too. So I think those are the things that you have to really be mindful of. I don't know, like in some ways it's great that China just, China's doing with it. And I think the idea is here you can be more sustainable in the United States, but we all also understand that like we don't live in a fantasy world. We live in a world where Americans like convenience and we like cheap shit, and we're going to buy the cheapest thing, even at the own detriment of our own American manufacturers. So you can try to bring stuff back. Maybe we can do it with these chips, Michael Vincent. Maybe that makes sense. Maybe slowly reel some industries back. But it's not like there isn't a direct cost that is associated with also doing
unintended consequences and slippery slopes. You got to watch out for them all, man. Step lightly and slowly.
All right, I'm going to ask each of you, just if you have a given outlook, positive, the same, or negative, how do you view 2023?
I think 2023 is going to be a year that starts off pretty low. It's going to stay where we are. It's going to be trying to come back to life. And I think by the middle of the year, you're going to start seeing some of that rebuilding. I think it starts slow, and I think it starts to pick up. So I think we might be back to a normal peak season next year. Can you imagine that? Normal peak season, real normalization. I think we're going to see the rates probably a little higher than what we saw in that 2019 level, because, look, they still have to be sustainable, and that's part of what normalization is, too. Normalization isn't just falling back down to earth at some level that doesn't exist anymore due to inflation or operational costs. So I think we'll see that with rates just being slightly above, and I think on both ocean and on trucking, you're gonna see that. So I think next year, hopefully, it's a lot more even, and you're gonna feel better about yourself in the second half of the year.
I'm with you, Dooner. I will just say I'll say it from this perspective. You remember where 2019 led us into 220? Into 2020, I think you're going to see that trend go. You can almost erase the last 3 years and just plug the line back in. 2020 was already low, and I think we're going to see that here, and it's going to slowly start to pick up. I think you'd be able to take these 2020, the beginning of 2020 through the first quarter of 2023, and erase all those and hook the lines right back up, and you're going to see that recovery and start and pull it back up from there.
Thank you guys for coming on the show again. Tell me a little bit about where people can find you, Dooner, if they're looking for you.
Yeah, sure. Like I'm very active on Twitter. You want to find me there at Timothy Dooner. That's DOONER, or LinkedIn. I'm on there. You can find What the Truck wherever you get podcasts on audio. Just look up What the Truck, or watch it on demand on FreightWaves YouTube or FreightWaves TV app, or any of that kind of stuff.
And Michael Vincent, where can people find you if they want to see the dude?
Hey, I'm still Michael Vincent on LinkedIn. I am also Vincent the Dude on Twitter, Michael Vincent on Instagram, and Sustainiacs, YouTube and podcast. Man, look up the Sustainiacs, talking all about sustainability in the world. Really focus on logistics and supply chain, but throughout the world.
Yeah, support my brother. He's building a new thing here. He's worked very hard on Sustainiac stuff all year long. If you haven't checked it out, you've only checked out What the Truck, definitely check out what Vincent's doing. He's he was a smart guy on the team. So if you want the smart analysis, that's where to go now.
But I mean, it is, man, because I'm talking to the Thomas Healy's and taking the deep dives with him and like what Uber and Convoy and so on are doing with how it affects sustainability in our lives.
Well, I appreciate you guys. Have a happy holidays and a happy new year, and we'll look out for all the stuff that goes through in 2023 and be following you both. Thank you.
Right on.
Take care. Love you guys. Merry Christmas, everybody.
All right. Well, I think that was solid. I mean, we covered a lot of ground, but also at the same time, that's got me feeling pretty good, actually, about freight over the next year. How about you, Charles?
It's nice to hear that optimistic view on what we got to look forward to. We're all looking for that feel-good story. We're all looking for that nice balance to what has been a crazy past couple of years. So, I agree with a lot of their points, and I think 2023 is going to show us itself what's in store for us.
Yep. So basically, in summation, it seems like things are going to get a little bit worse before they get better, but they are going to get better. And autonomous trucks aren't going to take anybody's jobs yet. EV trucks are still only pretty much going to be good for local, more than likely. Seems like a good time. But speaking of supply chain disruptions, Josh?
Yeah, Christmas came early. This is what I'm excited about. Charles had us special things delivered. I'm going to toss it to you with some movie magic. Hopefully we don't take anything out.
That wasn't movie magic. You just threw it to me. They know we're in the same room. They can see me in the background behind you.
Charles had these specially made for us. We see you sporting it the entire episode. Paul has not seen what his says on the background, so
nice. Media master.
Media master. Good job, Charles.
I can't wear it when I go fishing though, because that'll make a really bad joke.
Oh my God. Don't you forget it. I'm the producer. I make you guys look good is what I do.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that about does it for this week's episode. Don't forget, like, subscribe, rate wherever you're listening. Click the notification bell so that helps us so we can do some more cool stuff. It's been good, and see you next year.
Have a nice new year. Thank you for tuning in to Cents Per Mile. I'm your host, Charles Gracie.
And I'm your co-host, Paul Gibson. See you next time.